how to communicate with the Chinese. Many years ago, I think it was in the year 2011, I went for a course on advocacy to England, and there I met Dr. Derek Ross, who gave me this book as a present, written by Lewis. It's called When Cultures Collide. I then came across a chapter on China, and some of the things written here matched some of my own experience living in Malaysia, where for my entire life I've been dealing with the ethnic Chinese. And this is what this writer Lewis, Richard Lewis, says. For 2 millennia, the Chinese empire was its own universe, sucking in Korea, Vietnam and other neighbors, while exacting tribute from others including Japan. Its unbroken culture spread itself over many centuries throughout Asia, where its influences manifest in music, dance, paintings, religion, philosophy, architecture, theater, social structure, administration, and above all, language and literature. Westerners who, in the second half of the 20th century, may have seen China as a third world, relatively backward nation in terms of crude technology, sparse infrastructure, appalling hygiene, rampant pollution, outdated politics, and inadequate communication, fell, says he, 20 years ago, into the trap of misjudging, underestimating, and misunderstanding the power and impact of the Chinese people on their neighbors and now the world at large. China sees herself as Zhongguo, the Middle Kingdom, the center of the universe and the world's oldest culture and society. A visitor from the Tang dynasty, which was China's golden age, would still see its legacy intact in the streets and fields of China today. The Chinese, 1.5 billion strong, see no diminishment of their moral authority exercised with such power for thousands of years. Their sense of cultural superiority is greater than that of the Japanese, to whom the Chinese brought a rich civilization. Foreigners in the eyes of the Chinese are inferior, corrupt, decadent, disloyal and volatile, frequently hegemonic, barbaric, and in essence, devils. You would usually use the word kwai. So that, my dear friends, is the introduction that I wanted to give you about China. But I don't need this introduction to tell you how to communicate with the Chinese. There is a difference from Straits Chinese, Chinese who are members of the diaspora, and old school Chinese. So your approach to those who are ethnic Chinese, those who had traditional upbringing and who have had Chinese education is different from those who have had traditional Chinese education as well as English education. Be mindful of this difference, but the first thing you need to understand is Chinese cultural norms.
先做人，再做事。
The first principle is, in order to communicate with the Chinese, you have to win his heart. Traditional values are important. Showing respect towards the elders, preserving the face or honor is absolutely important. Titles are to be used carefully. Speak gently, slowly, and watch your tone. Eye contact is not absolute. You can deliver a killer blow with downcast eyes. Do not ever let your Chinese guest be put in a position where he has to apologize to you. He hates apologizing. He will avoid it with all his heart. It's a matter of pride for him. You see, the traditionalist Chinese value honor as much as integrity and efficiency. But what is honor? In Malaysia, we will say, don't drop my water face. That's honor. It's a very difficult and complex concept. If you first meet a Chinese gentleman, inquire after his family. It's never done in the West. It is seen as a breach of privacy. It is the opposite in Chinese culture. The Chinese, you must remember, avoid making enemies with people who are not on the table. Avoid any direct confrontation. Avoid dealing with the subject directly, and recognize that in a matter of communication with the Chinese, there are 3 stages. The beginning, the second point, circumambulation or the dance. The last phase is the close, which is expected to be In Chinese custom, soft landing for both parties, win-win. So let's deal with phase one or the beginning. There are certain do's and don'ts. Let's deal with do's. When you go to someone's house or business meeting as a friend, bring a gift. He will reciprocate by giving you a parting gift. His parting gift may be as much as a dinner or tea or in fact a souvenir. Let him talk of his family. Let him speak of his children. Speak about things that will bring you rapport, break the barriers. He may refer to his own social status. Accept it. Second, time. The Chinese businessman has a keen sense of time. If you compare most of the East Asians, the Chinese will often arrive earlier, sometimes as early as 30 minutes. If you ask him why, he will tell you that he will want to complete our business before our meeting starts. Think about that sentence. He will then say, our meeting ends at 3 p.m., but I do have to leave 15 minutes earlier. Why do you think he says that? He's trying to tell you that your time is valuable to him. Now let's deal with some don'ts. Do not rush into the main subject. Wait. He will go in a circle. He will not confuse you, but he will speak about things slowly. Don't confuse bonhomie for communication. Don't compliment him too much. The Chinese view over-complimentation as suspicious conduct. Second, the dance, the middle stage. When should you move into the main subject? Well, let him eventually come to say what he wants to say first. Give him that chance. The Chinese will never approach the objective directly, quite unlike the Westerners, especially the Americans. Now, there is a difference between beating around the bush and circumambulation. They will go through minor points first. They will circle around the main unspoken subject. It's a good strategy to agree with the minor points, but be watchful and wait for the 800-pound gorilla that will come later, much, much later. Wait for it. The most important one is always the sentence he will say as he's about to leave you. By the way, can you include this small point with other things that you're offering to us? Now that would be the main objective. That would be the most important thing he wants. So remember, winning in Chinese communication means he wins and you win and everybody wins. Winning means draw. Remember, with the Chinese, there can be no losers.
以和为贵 Harmony is the most precious or to be prized.
So how do you find out what he wants? Well, you can't ask him. You have to listen carefully, not to his words, but to his body language. And after listening, probe gently, indirectly, point by point. Do not do anything that will make him, as we say in Malaysia, lose face at any point of time. When you want to give something of value, ask him, what would you like in exchange? If he cannot give you what you want, ask him what he can give you in exchange, which is not what you want, but with some equivalent value. Suggest what you can give in the alternative. But how do you refuse what he wants? Never say to a Chinese businessman, you cannot have this, I will not give this to you. Please say to him, I'll consider your suggestion and I'll come back to you. Let a few days pass. Let the dust settle. Give him a chance to say the same thing in different ways, in a way that's convenient to him and to you. Remember, winning is a draw.
人事通，万事通。
The Chinese have a lot of pride. He will not ask you anything. He will never risk losing face. But his pride is concealed. Do not confuse his apparent humility with civility. He has 5,000 years of civilization behind him, and he will defeat you at every turn because he will play the long game. He is not interested in short-term gains. He will think nothing of going over your head. He will use emissaries to approach you indirectly, and while you're negotiating or communicating with him, accept and acknowledge that he will be studying your eyebrows, your hands, what photograph is where, the photos on your table, the car you drive, the driver that you use, where you live, and so forth. This is why you will find young Chinese entrepreneurs who are wanting to scale the economic ladder rush off to buy on credit properties in famous neighborhoods. It's a badge of success, and badges of success are very important to the Chinese. Now, eye contact is not necessary. When you speak, bow but not overmuch. Look for common interest. When the other side is speaking, listen to the underlying message. Filter the main points. This is a skill that you have to develop, and you cannot do it overnight. You have to interpret what he wants without asking him. If you ask him, then you insult his intelligence. The Chinese prefer a personal touch. They prefer a face-to-face meeting over a dinner or lunch. They don't like WhatsApp messages, emails, and letters. They prefer to shake hands and go away. Be sure at the end to thank him for his valuable time. Because the Chinese value their guests' time, they will often apologize for taking your time. But at the end of the meeting, don't rush off to the airport. The Chinese will be upset. If the Chinese gentleman has not completed his part, you have to wait. And this is a contradiction you have to understand. And the last part, how do you refuse what he wants? Never say, I cannot give this to you. Never say, I don't agree with you. Say, I have a different opinion. Would you like to consider this point? Can I come back to you after consulting colleagues and let a few days pass? So, the last part, at the end of the meeting, he may invite you to dinner or tea, or he may give you a souvenir. Now, some general do's and don'ts. When you see someone who's Chinese, offer food, especially fruits. The colors of food and the way the name of the fruit is pronounced in Chinese is important. For example, when they give you an orange mandarin, there's a great many layers of meaning behind it. Now, there are things that you should never do. Do not say, hello, how are you? You should say, have you had something to eat? You will always say, yes. But he may even be starving. He may have had nothing to eat from the time he rushed off from the airport to meet you. So offer him a drink. He will refuse. Persist. Say, there's a lot of tea over here. Would you like to join us, please? I would like to have some tea. Could you have some tea with us? Listen carefully to what he's saying and watch his body language. Keep in your head, do not let him lose face. Don't over-compliment him, but acknowledge his achievements. These are two different things. Do not confront him directly. Give him a chance to withdraw his demands honorably without losing face. These are the points that I have learned in my decades at the bar dealing with my clients, most of whom are Chinese. It is very important, no matter how well educated your Chinese guest is, to remember to honor his culture, to respect him, to show humility to him without being overly officious. So with that, I leave you. I hope you've learned something useful as I have from this little episode. Until I see you again, please press the like button, ring that bell, and subscribe. Thank you very much, and goodbye.